Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and yes, on TikTok, even though supposedly it's going to be banned here in the next couple of days. We'll find out about that. Yeah, a lot of good stuff going on and a lot of good stuff coming your way. If you did not see Real Hawk Talk last night, you're going to want to check that out. We had a lot of fun with almost the entire crew. We had Dana, we had Evan, we had Josh, we had Nathan, we had Derek. It was a lot of fun. So make sure you check that out. It was a great episode. It's up now on any podcast network you love, as well as obviously up on YouTube and so forth. Today, though, we've got a really special treat. If you do not know Brandon Thorne, you are someone who just does not care about the offensive line. You don't think it matters because there is nobody that covers this position like Brandon Thorne. We're going to talk to him about all that he's done, all that he's going to do, and we're going to talk about what it means for the Seahawks. Before we get to that, make sure you click like and subscribe. We got a ton of stuff going on. I'm going to be at the Senior Bowl in a few weeks. Later today, I'll be talking to Arif Hassan of The Athletic about Scott Udinsky, as well as Sam Darnold and some of the other stuff. Got great stuff there. And then tomorrow we'll have Mike Sando, Ben Gothling of the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. A lot of great stuff coming, but nothing better than our guest today, Brandon Thorne of Trench Warfare and Establish the Run. How are you doing this morning, Brandon?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing really, really well. Thanks for making it on this show. I know you've got a ton of things going on, especially this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do it.
For folks that aren't as familiar with your work, talk about how you got into what you do and why the offensive line has become kind of an obsession for you.
Yeah, so I got in to the offensive line. I played it in high school, so I always kind of had an appreciation for it since then. But I joined the military out of high school, did about 10 years in the Air Force. Throughout that time, still huge football fan, was into scouting, kind of doing my own mock drafts, that kind of thing. And eventually had the opportunity to get out in 2013, 14. And I just wanted to get out to pursue NFL scouting. So started from basically, a couple followers on Twitter back in the day and started networking, reaching out to people. Got involved with the Scouting Academy run by Dan Hatman, former NFL scout. I did a couple semesters there. I kind of just, door was opened to me to meet the former general manager of the Broncos, Ted Sundquist, who was an Air Force veteran as well. And he was living locally by me in Colorado at the time. So I kind of linked up with him and started writing for his website. So we started a podcast together. And he just opened up a lot of doors. The Scouting Academy, just worked for free for a while, essentially, used the GI Bill to get my degree. Just kept building, into part-time, and now I've been full-time for the last few years. But I did notice kind of initially in that 2014 timeframe that people weren't really talking about offensive line. And when they did, it was just kind of like real surface level, like not real, in depth. Mm-hmm. So I figured, I could probably try to carve out a niche here, focusing on line play. And went to LaCharles Bentley's inaugural clinic in 2016 in Phoenix. And then linked up with Duke Manyweather. And then, I've been with offensive line masterminds the last 7 years. I've been going to those events. So it's just, people have, taken me under their wing, and doors have been open for me, and, just trying to approach it earnestly and diligently as much as I can, and trying to learn. And it's just built into this career now, that I get to do it full time. So it's a blessing.
Congratulations, man. That's an amazing story. And I think something that a lot of people connect to. And I didn't know your Air Force background. Thank you very much for your service. Really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Very grateful for folks that do that. And when we talk about offensive line, I was joking with the folks on this show this week that any editor for like the Athletic or ESPN or a sports radio show, anytime you pitch an offensive line story, they're like, no, we got to talk about quarterbacks and receivers. Right. They don't want to do it. That's one of the reasons we love this show, because we're focusing on what matters for winning football and what matters for the Seahawks. And as you know, there's probably few fan bases that have had to suffer through worse offensive line play than the Seahawks have for the last like decade. Talk about like the Seahawks offensive line. What you saw of it from last year. Obviously, any individual notes you've got, but just kind of generally speaking, where do you think the Seahawks offensive line is?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's kind of obvious that the offensive line struggled last year, for the most part, and part of that was due to injuries. Not having Abraham Lucas, for the first however many games, at least more than half of the year, that hurt them. So kind of had a revolving door at right tackle after they decided to, bench Stone Forsythe. Right guard kind of was revolving, after Bradford, Haynes, and then Lumia. So a lot of moving pieces on the right side, backups, third string. Your center retires in the middle of the year. Your left guard struggles, for most of the year. And then, your left tackle is your best player in Charles Cross. But even him, I think has a couple issues, you kind of nitpick. But in the grand scale of this offensive line, we probably shouldn't spend too much time nitpicking your best player. But yeah, I mean, it's just it wasn't a good situation for all those reasons. And players struggled. And I think at this point, you're looking at, almost like a full scale kind of rebuild, at least on the interior. I think, assuming Lucas is going to be able to come back and be healthy. But yeah, I think the interior, all three starters are on the table, for being replaced.
Yeah, that's helpful to hear. And so based in that, it sounds like let's say that Abe Lucas is healthy, which you never know with any player, but going into his first offseason, really since his rookie year, where he will not be rehabbing something and
right, that's huge.
Has been able to play this year. Yep. You're comfortable with those two tackles?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, you have to start somewhere. I mean, it's not the best situation in the NFL, but it doesn't need to be. It's fine. I think that could be solid. That's workable. And hopefully those guys aren't done getting better. Like you said, with Lucas having the full off season, Cross, maybe he can add a little bit of weight. I don't know if that'll happen, but I think that's what he needs to do. But yeah, I mean, there's areas of improvement there. And I think, even if they just kind of maintain where they're at, that's solid enough. It's, the focus should be on the interior, I think.
So on the interior, are all three of those spots must upgrades? Are there any of those spots where you're like, well, there might be someone in that spot now that could grow into a serviceable starter?
Yeah, I mean, I think what they would probably want as a team, and I think it's possible, is, man, it'd be great if Bradford, Lumia, or Haynes could take those three, could take two of the guard spots. That would be great. Tomlinson's a free agent, I believe. So yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, two of those three would take those spots. I think center, you probably need to upgrade, in my opinion. Oluwatimi. I mean, I just, evaluating him in college, I saw play strength concerns, the ability to anchor, deal with power. You see him when he's matched up one-on-one against high-level defensive tackles. He struggles to sustain blocks, to hold the point of attack. I don't know how much that is going to improve. I think he's probably a nice guy to have on the roster, but the thing is, though, you have to look at what's out there, in terms of being able to upgrade the position. And this isn't a very good center class. It's okay. You might be able to find a guy, but it's not like last year. Last year was an all-time great class. And then free agency wise, we'll see. I haven't looked at the free agent crop yet. So maybe there's a guy out there that's a potential upgrade as well. That's a potential option. But yeah, so do I think I think at least one of those three guards is going to take one of these spots, okay. Who that is, I'd probably lean Haynes. Just because we've seen the least of him in some ways. I just watched Lamea this year. And, I evaluated him coming out of Utah and whatnot, played right tackle, a little bit of guard there. I just think him and Bradford have pretty serious like pass protection concerns. That I don't know. As of this moment, it's not reliable. I don't think to put one of them in the lineup. Now we'll see with an off season and all that if they could get better. But yeah, I mean, um, it's I think you could also probably add somebody too because I don't know. Like I said, it's a little shaky.
Yeah,
Right now.
it's a lot shaky, Brandon.
Yeah,
You're not
yeah,
going to hurt anybody's feelings
it's pretty
here.
shaky. Yeah,
Only truth is going to lead you to redemption
yeah,
on this
because
Seahawks offensive line. So
yeah,
I'll talk to you about a couple free agents, see if there's any that pique your interest. But yeah, I will say this, and I got a lot of crap from my co-host last night on this topic, but I agree with you on Laumea's pass protection. Definitely some very, very rough reps. I saw him move people in the run game and show some promise there in a way that I didn't see from a lot of other guards that have played for the Seahawks over the last few years. So,
yeah.
um,
I would just piggyback on that, and I think his strengths are so what we call B blocks, backside combination blocks, or front side single double team blocks. They're called singles. I think front side, backside double teams, his ability to be firm, create some lift, and then displacement vertically off the ball. I think that was there. That's his strength. That's his calling card. It's just he needs to increase his mental processing skills and pass protection to not get picked off from stunts and twists, and then also get edged very easily because his hands and his footwork are just not very good right now. So yeah,
Christian Haynes, one more beat on him. Obviously, there was higher hopes for him coming into this season, being a third round pick. A lot of people had him as their top guard on their boards going into the draft last year. More experienced, was not, one of the younger guys. He'd been in college for a while and then had plenty of opportunity to win the job and ultimately ended up 3 out of 3 in the depth chart at guard. And the question that the coaching staff had when I was talking to them was play strength, actually, similar to what you had brought up relative to Oluwatimi. Tell us a little bit about why Haynes is a guy that you think might make a jump in his second season.
yeah, it's interesting. He's one of those players. Looking back at my evaluation, like you mentioned, he was a 40 plus game starter at right guard, almost 50 games. So very experienced. Had a really good Senior Bowl where his play strength actually stood out during the Senior Bowl, and as well as on his game tape as well. I don't know. I'm kind of thrown for a loop on that his play strength, because I remember
Mm-hmm.
reading some quotes on, like he needs like power, I think was mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
and play strength
Mm-hmm.
were concerns. So it may just be like a weight thing. Maybe a little bit of his frame is just not as imposing as a Lamea, or even like, I mean, Anthony Bradford is extremely physically imposing,
Right.
but
Right.
so he's not there in terms of his size. He's a little bit more of kind of a like squatty kind of build.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that is really the main concern. And you see it on film. Yeah, he did just kind of get overrun at the point of attack more than you really saw in college or even at the Senior Bowl. So it could just be one of those things where, because he was playing at UConn, wasn't challenged nearly to the degree that he is in the NFL. It was able to be masked a little bit more. And then at the Senior Bowl, I'm not sure, because he was really good there. So I still have hopes for him, though. I still think that he's, I would expect him to compete for one of these jobs and have, a decent chance of still winning one of these jobs. And who knows? I mean, maybe center's even on the table there too.
You led me right to it. I was going to ask you. So
knows?
he did take some snaps at center. Obviously, he did at Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
He started doing it at the end of the season for the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And as of now, Mike McDonald has talked about him as primarily thinking about him as guard, but that's open at center as well. Do you think that he might profile better at the center position than he does at guard?
I think it's a possibility, yeah. Just typically if guard prospects are a little bit more slight in their frame, and they're able to be quick, thinking, their processing skills are good, their quickness is there, that's kind of a candidate to play center. And I think, for the most part, he's a viable candidate, at least to see what you have in camp. And you just drafted him, so you want him to compete somewhere, and I expect him to do that. And I think he has, like I said, just a decent chance, probably at both spots. But I think center is one that we need to probably think about.
Brandon, I'm curious. We all get prospects right and wrong, and no matter how much we spend time breaking down tape and how much expertise we have, people that get paid many millions of dollars to be GMs get them right or wrong. I'm kind of curious, do you have a prospect or two from last year's draft that you were like, I nailed this guy, I nailed it? Like, I knew this guy was going to be good and he turned out to be good. And maybe a guy that you had last year that you thought was going to be good and were surprised that he struggled.
Yeah, so I would say for being good, like, I just think of, I could pull it up too, but I think of like my guys, in the draft last year. I do this article every year where I just basically pick my guys in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, my top few guys, like Troy Fatanu got hurt, Steelers, Graham Barton was one of my guys, Zach Frazier, Dominic Pooney, Christian Haynes was also one of my guys too. So
That's good to
Christian
hear.
Mahogany. Yeah, Christian Mahogany had, that one game with the Lions, looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
I like Brandon Coleman. He's full-time starter at the Commanders. And then I always pick like some late day 3 undrafted guys. So kind of TBD on those guys like Matt Lee and Elijah Klein. So Hunter Norzad, those guys are just, backups because they're late picks. So of those names, I mean, I guess you could say Christian Haynes is the one that, didn't do as well as I thought. And then I was pretty happy with, those other guys.
Yeah, those are all great calls. So, as we talk about free agency for a second, I'm going to throw out a couple names for you and just see if any, get your attention. So now, not does not say John Schneider has really gone big at free agent offensive guards over time, but the first one obviously is Trey Smith. Trey Smith going to be an unrestricted free agent for the Chiefs, and will almost certainly be a $20+ million a year player. Do you think that that's the kind of guy that the Seahawks should be spending big money on?
I mean, I think any team should want to get Trey Smith on their team. I'm a huge Trey Smith fan, so I all the inner workings of the Seahawks cap and all that I can't speak to, and
Mm-hmm.
if it makes sense from that regard. But I mean, yeah, if you could get Trey Smith on your offensive line, yeah, do it 100% out of 100. Yeah, I mean, he's a difference maker. He's he was good this year, really good. I think he cleaned up some things in pass protection, some of the technique things that he had, some issues with in terms of using his outside hand and pass protection, getting edged a little too quickly. He cleaned that up a little bit, but he's an imposing run blocker, and honestly, just he's in the archetype of like like Quentin Nelson or Wyatt Teller or you know, going back to like Roger Saffold and guys like that. He's just one of the bigger, kind of like thicker built type of guys with a really like nasty demeanor. And he's a tone setter. He's going to generate knockdowns for you and be the kind of the leader of the offensive line in terms of competitive toughness and that stuff. And there's a lot of guys that want to do that, but they're unable to kind of back it up with their size and their play strength and their power and their length like he is able to do. So he's kind of a rare guy, in a lot of ways. So yeah, I would, advocate for Trey Smith on any offensive line.
James Daniels of the Steelers, who is 27 years old. He's coming off an Achilles injury, but was playing some pretty good ball before he got hurt. Thoughts on him?
Yeah, he was playing pretty good. He still has, I think he's liable to to lose pretty cleanly in pass protection a little bit more often than you would want. But he's another guy who, plays with really good physicality, not on Trey's level. He's not that big of a guy. Not that he's small, he's just not Trey. But yeah, I think he just thinking of his tape this year before he got hurt, and even last year, he has settled in at guard after a career in Chicago where there's a lot of questions on, is he a guard or a center? But yeah, I think he's probably a solid level starter. Probably be a little bit more stable of a presence than the guys that are on the Seahawks roster now. I don't know if he's a difference maker, but he's one of those guys who's, if you get him for a reasonable cost, and I think it's probably a pretty good target. It could be a solid player.
All right, I'm going to list off a few names. You tell me if any of these pique your interest. Will Hernandez, Nate Herbig, Tevin Jenkins, Will Fries. We'll stop there. Any of those names grab your Ben Bredesen. I'll put him on the list as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think all those guys, minus Herbig, maybe he's probably the guy who's kind of the least proven of those names. But the thing is, all those guys, injury questions for the most part. Not all of them, but like Tevin Jenkins, Will Hernandez. Will Hernandez is coming off a serious injury, but he was playing really good football the last couple of years in Arizona. He's kind of a unique player in terms of his build. He's one of the heavier guards in the league, and he kind of looks that way. He's not like one of these lean guards, but play strength is there. Anchor. If he's healthy, I think he would be a really nice addition. Tevin Jenkins, that's a guy I really liked coming out of the draft, but he just hasn't been able to stay healthy really. He's another guy, extremely physically imposing, could kind of set the tone for the line, be a pretty good run blocker. Pass protection's a little dicey, but again, health is a question there. So I guess it depends on the cost that you could get him at. Ben Bredesen's coming off the best year of his career this year in Tampa. I don't know how sustainable that is going to be. Again, it depends on the cost, but he was pretty good this year. I don't know. He would probably be so is Hernandez, Bredesen. Who were the other guys? Jenkins and who else?
Jenkins. We can talk about Daniels. We talk about Herbig.
Yeah. Herbig. Okay.
I'll throw another one out there for you. Mekhi Becton.
Yeah, Becton. It's kind of a question: is he going to be able to sustain this level of play without Jeff Stoutland, without being next to Lane Johnson? I'd probably roll the dice on him too, coming off a really good year. If ranking those, if Hernandez is healthy, I would say Hernandez and Becton would be the two, that I would like there at right guard. So those would probably be my top two of those guys, with Daniels right there.
Yeah. We're speaking the same language. So we're talking to Brandon Thorn of Trench Warfare, established the run OL Mastermind. So make sure you check him out on all the places. So shift our attention to the draft. Do you head to the Senior Bowl? Do you go to that in person, or is that not something you do?
Yeah, I'll be there. I usually go every year. So
all right. Well, I'll see you down there. Hopefully, be my first time. I gotta ask.
Oh, nice.
I'm looking. People said the last person I had on yesterday, Ryan Fowler, said that they only have Chick-fil-A to eat down there. Is that true?
What? No, dude. No, it's. I look forward to the food there. I mean, if you like seafood, it's right on the water, right on the ocean there. So Cajun, kind of a Cajun flair to seafood. So, I usually eat really good when I'm there. There's tons of options. So,
all right, that's good to hear. That makes me feel a little bit better, Brandon.
It's good.
So who are you looking forward to seeing down there? Who are you like, you can't wait to get your eyes on them in person?
Oh man. That's, I would say right off the top, Armin Membu, from Missouri. Really looking forward to seeing him. Played right tackle this year. He's in the running for being the top tackle in the draft. So I think him. Josh Connerly Jr., Oregon left tackle. He's in the running for being the top tackle in the draft. So those two. Ariante Ursary from Minnesota. I think he's going. he's going. Those guys, for sure. An underrated tackle prospect that I like is Ozzie Trapillo from Boston College. Kind of reminds me of Rob Havenstein. He's going to be there. Marcus Mbow, he's going to be there. Gosh, man, I mean, the Senior Bowl every single year. That's why I go. The trenches at the Senior Bowl are loaded every year, and that's the difference between them and the Shrine. The Shrine this year has some nice skill players, but there's just no comparison. Like if you're top prospect on the offensive line, you're going to play in Mobile. So they pretty much have every guy that you could want to see, aside from, Josh Simmons from Ohio State is hurt. And then Will Campbell, he's probably the consensus best offensive lineman in the draft. He doesn't need to go. So aside from those guys,
Tyler Booker.
Yeah, I mean, Booker, won't go. I don't think. Banks, I don't think. So like those three, I think, are the only three top 2-3 round grade type of offensive linemen that won't be there. Everybody else will. So,
yeah.
I mean, the list is long, dude. It's going to be, and then the defensive line is stacked as well. So it's going to be awesome to see these guys match up.
Well, talk to us. I mean, obviously, with the Seahawks, a lot of interest
Focus
in
on
the interior.
Yeah.
And specifically, I don't know. I think this is a trend, but you would know much better than me. Like when I was looking last year, I had Dominic Pooney over Christian Haynes because I liked the athleticism of tackle moving inside to guard, and I thought it just would play better in the NFL. And I think we're seeing that as like Mekhi Becton we just talked about. He's definitely had his career improved by moving inside. I don't know how many 6'7", 360 guys are going to be moving inside, but do you think that that's a trend? And when you're talking about these tackles, how many of them are you looking at as potentially guard options?
Yeah, so I just wrote an article about a month and a half ago about this exact topic. It's kind of the very good college tackle to pro guard pipeline that I coined it in that article. And yeah, I mean, it's been a trend for a long time. Zach Martin, Joe Tooney, Brandon Scherf, Elijah Vera Tucker, Sam Cosme, Tyler Smith, Joe Batonio, Quinn Miners. The list, is very long of college left tackles that play guard in the NFL, and many of them are the best guards in the league. So it's just something that's been going on for about 10 years, or so, even longer. Robert Gallery, there's his name, who had to do it a long time ago. But yeah, so that there's a ton of precedent for it. And I think that this class in particular has a lot of guys that probably, in my opinion, have more of a sure pathway to being long-term starters, kicking inside to guard. I think Will Campbell's in that conversation, Kelvin Banks, Wyatt Millum from West Virginia, Jonas Avenea from Arizona, Gray Zabel from North Dakota State, Marcus Mbow from Purdue, even LSU's Emory Jones. I think all those guys are probably going to be better inside at guard. So there's a lot of not only precedent, but there's a lot of candidates for that in this class, as well as a few like true guards, that I think are really good prospects, like Tate Ratledge. I think he's a really good guard prospect from Georgia. I actually really like this guy named Jalen Rivers from Miami, who's going to be at the Senior Bowl. He's one of my favorite kind of dark horse guys that are going to be there. 6'5", 330, big, physical, played tackle this year a little bit, actually would kick in and out mid-game throughout the year, and has really good body control for his size. And so I'm really excited to see him there. So, yeah, I mean, there's, I think if you kick a lot of these tackles inside to guard, it's a really good guard class. If that happens, it's a little bit shakier of a pure tackle class and a pure center class, I think.
Brandon, we're here at the halfway mark. Do you have a few more minutes?
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. Appreciate it. So Seahawks are at 18 in the first round. And then I think they have 50 might be their next pick. Give us a couple of guys at 18 that if they called their names on the offensive line, you'd be like, that's a good choice.
Let's see. I would say, Armand Membu from Missouri. That would be a good one who could potentially play guard. Probably gone, but maybe might be there. If he's there, that'd be a really good pick. Of course, Will Campbell will probably be gone, but that'd be a great one. I think Kelvin Banks would be pretty solid there if you could get him, as a guard candidate. I'm not super high on Banks. I have kind of like a high second round grade on him, but that could be a potential option. I'd be, and then after that, 18 is a little rich for most guys to me, but I mean, my top guards on the board after that are Tyler Booker, Tate Ratledge. I think Wyatt Millum would be a good one. And then you're starting to get into more true second, third round grades for me, but I'd probably say Booker and Ratledge would be, true guard type options there that I'd feel pretty good about at 18.
So everyone that's been watching this show knows I'm on a journey with Tyler Booker. I see his size. I see that he's been guard essentially only, big dude. Alabama had his mixed history of their offensive linemen in the NFL, and I wonder about how that's going to translate from a pass pro perspective into the NFL versus one of these more athletic. Like Savaniah is a guy that I'm not saying at 18, but I really like his profile kicking inside to guard in like the second round or something like that, or maybe, the very late first round if you trade back. Talk to me about why Tyler Booker could be a really good NFL guard.
I mean, 6'5", 350, play strength is very good, and he has a nasty demeanor. He got a lot better from 23 to 24 in terms of consistency with his technique, body control, playing a little bit more, just with more control and pass protection, I would say. But you're getting him for run blocking and anchoring. He's not going to, one-on-one, he's not matching up with, Quinnen Williams, or Chris Jones or something like that. I mean, but that's the thing. You have to contextualize that. I would say no guard in football, I would feel good about matching up one-on-one with those guys. None. Maybe, Zach Martin in his prime. I don't know. I mean, Joe Tooney to an extent, but like the list is very slim. So with that understood, that's going to be his weakness. But I also think that could be mitigated, but it depends on what sort of scheme you're running. That's a huge part of offensive line success. What is he going to be asked to do? What is the scheme asking him to do or not asking him to do? What's your run pass split? How often are you using play action and RPOs? How often are you moving the pocket? So on and so forth. All that plays into every single draft pick that we're going to talk about pretty much. So if, Seattle, to direct it there, assuming that they're going to run the ball more, Tyler Booker makes a lot of sense, especially if you're going to be incorporating a lot of play action into your passing game. You're going to be trying to avoid true drop back situations as much as you can, and really focusing on the run game being efficient enough to do that. He could be a guy who could be an asset in that sort of situation. Now, if things fall apart and you have to pass the ball a lot and you're down a lot and it's obvious pass, Tyler Booker's going to get exposed a little bit. So I think it just depends on the situation. And, that's why, ultimately when you're talking about that sort of player, I have him as a second round player. So I compared him to Osiris Torrance, and that's the kind of guy I see. And Torrance has been really good in Buffalo, but that situation, man, in Buffalo is really nice. He has one of the best offensive line coaches maybe of all time in Aaron Cromer, who saved Spencer Brown's career. So he's got to come in, Osiris, that is, to a situation where he's being coached by one of the best ever. Is Tyler Booker going to go into that sort of situation? Probably not. But all in all, I think you're looking at a second round guard who could be an asset in a run first, play action heavy scheme.
Last thing I want to ask you about, as you talk about offensive line coaches, one of the names that popped up, the first name, as a matter of fact, for the Seahawks offensive coordinator position is Hank Fraley
Mhm.
of the Detroit Lions. And wanted to know your thoughts on Hank Fraley. And I also wanted to get your thoughts on offensive line coaches as offensive coordinators, because it's not the normal path for coaches to take.
Yeah, just as the second part of that first, I think it's a case by case basis. It depends on the specific guy's background, if he has any experience doing that, which I don't think Hank Fraley does. Just looking at his bio, he's been an offensive line coach his whole career. So, it's like anybody else who's never called plays. Putting a guy in that situation, it's a bit of a wild card. The one positive for doing it with an offensive line coach is offensive line coaches by and large design the run game for offensive coordinators. So at least he'll have that, kind of in his back pocket. But, and, in terms of, sequencing plays and, layering things on top of each other and, all the sorts of things that offensive coordinators need to do that offensive line coaches never do. That's kind of a, learn as you go sort of thing. So we don't know. So I would just say I'm a little bit like kind of indifferent to that. I just don't know. But, Hank Fraley, just looking at him as an offensive line guy, just what he's done in Detroit has been impressive. They've, got pretty good development from, I think Decker, since Fraley got there in 18 is, stabilized and, turned into a pretty solid player. I mean, Hank Fraley, like, I think the run game there is really maybe probably the best thing that he's done in Detroit, because I don't know that there's like a developmental story that he has in Detroit. I mean, Penei Sewell is Penei Sewell. They signed Kevin Zeitler, who was Kevin Zeitler. So that's not really, I mean, I guess you could credit Fraley to an extent with Sewell, like just kind of turning into what everyone thought he was going to turn into, but it's not like, it's not like Aaron Cromer with Spencer Brown, it's not like that. So, but aside from Decker, I don't know. I mean, Graham Glasgow's been pretty solid, but he's always been pretty solid. Frank Ragnow's Frank Ragnow. So we don't know, I would say how much Hank Fraley is going to develop guys, based on his career. So, yeah, I mean, I just don't know, for the offensive coordinator role, and then for offensive line coach, I'd feel good about it because of the environment he's coming from too. Is it, he's been able to kind of, learn from Ben Johnson and be around him and all that, so I think that that's beneficial. But yeah, it's kind of up in the air, I think.
Helpful to hear. Interesting perspectives there. Brandon, what should folks check out from you that's coming up? Where should they go and what should they be looking forward to?
Yeah, so trenchwarfare.substack.com. People can subscribe to my work there. Bringing back the film room this year with college prospects. I've been doing that. This is the 5th year. So going to be talking to Will Campbell, going to be talking to Armin Membu, Josh Simmons, lots of guys. Probably all the first round offensive linemen candidates. They're going to be joining me for film rooms, and a bunch of other guys as well. Some of my favorites in this class. So those will start rolling out here either end of this week or next week. Probably going to do a big Senior Bowl preview before I leave. Yeah, it's really just, and also I would mention Bleacher Report as well, because I've scouted every offensive lineman in the draft for the last 5 years through them. So any offensive lineman in the class, all the way down to the undrafted guys, if you want to see a scouting report on them, I probably already have it done. I have about 45, 50 reports done. And I'm going to be doing more. So if you want to get like the nitty gritty on these guys and how I see them based on my film study, Bleacher Report.
Amazing. Brandon Thorne, the guy you want to follow if you want to learn about the offensive line, which if you're a Seahawks fan, you better want to learn about the offensive line. Thank you so much for joining, Brandon. Hopefully we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, I'll see you down in Mobile. That was Brandon Thorne of Establish the Run, Trench Warfare, and everywhere else. So make sure you follow him and continue to get all the great info from him. Great stuff there. Yeah, so interesting stuff, interesting names. I think one of the names that kind of caught my attention was when he was talking about Jalen Rivers. Not a guy I spent a lot of time looking at. played tackle, but also played left tackle, but also played left guard, for Miami. If you've been watching Cam Ward, you've been watching Jalen Rivers, and, a little bit better of a pass blocker than a run blocker, at least by his grades. And his size profile, 6'5", 325. It's kind of an ideal guard. So really eager to see what he looks like. While we were on, we got some additional news that came back from who? From Mr. Ian Rappaport, who has reported that the Seahawks are doing a second in-person interview with Clint Kubiak to be their offensive coordinator. Also reported by Mike Garofalo. So this is the second in-person interview for Clint Kubiak. That's good news for Clint Kubiak. We'll find out if it's good news for the Seahawks. We'll find out also if we're going to get some more names included in this list. So far, if they're already getting to second interviews, it feels like we did not get very many names from the first round. And it's possible that they talked to a lot more people than we know. It's also possible that they just want us to think that they talk to more people in order to do that old PR thing where they'll tell us, yeah, we talked to all these guys, but you only heard about these. And this is the best of we were very lucky to get this guy. Everybody else wanted him. So I'm not there yet on Clint Kubiak. I'll just tell you that. His dad, Gary Kubiak, was known for under center play action, and I love that offense. I think that's a perfectly reasonable offense to run. There's two things that I have challenges with. One, it tends to go with zone blocking schemes. I'm not a huge fan of the zone blocking schemes, and part of the reason is because it's lighter offensive linemen, and I don't think we have the right players for it. And I also think that you tend to get, with the lighter offensive linemen, you tend to have a harder time creating a good pocket. I think this is part of why you've seen some of the teams in the NFL go to heavier guards and even centers in order to have a stronger pocket protection for your quarterback. And zone blocking schemes don't really go well with heavier interior offensive linemen. So it's just not my favorite. So that's one part. I'm not against it, but it's not I would rather them just go into the gap scheme. I think that's where you saw actual movement in the offensive line last year when they were doing, GT pulls, they were doing the duo blocking. I think that's the team that they've got and the players that they got. And I'd love to see somebody who's going to emphasize that. The other thing that I have questions with Clint Kubiak is, for a guy that's supposed to be known from a family of play action play callers, he was 23rd in the NFL with the Saints last year in play action pass rate. He was like 18th when he was with the Vikings as an OC. He has not been a heavy play action guy. And I'm not someone who believes that you have to be play action or else you're not doing this right. A few years ago, it was everyone has to do motion or they're not doing this right. Now you're seeing all this data where the motion is not having quite the same effect as it used to have. So, I mean, these things all shift and move, but if part of his allure is play action, I'm not seeing it in the numbers that he's actually utilizing it that much. So I'm not against it, but I'm not super excited about Clint Kubiak, to be honest. I'm more interested in some of these other names. And we will have a conversation with a guy who hopefully will shine a little bit more light on Grant Udinski later today. At noon today, I'll be talking to Arif Hassan. I moved it up from Monday to today, just given the timeliness of what's going on. So appreciate Arif making that possible. So I'll see you guys all again later today. And then tomorrow, we're going to have Mike Sando at 8 a.m., and then at 9 a.m., I'll be talking to Ben Gosling of the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, who wrote the article on Grant Udinski. So, we'll learn some more about these guys. looks like I might have to dig into my bag of tricks to talk to some people about Clint Kubiak, because if he's getting a second interview, we should learn a little bit more. He's kind of in the Tyler Booker category for me, which is like, yep, might make some sense. My spidey senses are telling me don't do it. And so I'm a little bit wary. I'm a little bit skeptical, but my mind is open. I'm not closing my mind to Clint Kubiak, but certainly would not be my first choice. So, all right. With that in mind, if you haven't given the show a like and click subscribe, please do. I greatly appreciate it. We got a super chat here from Will Reinford saying, this is for Brandon. Sorry. I don't generally take super chats with guests. Sorry, folks, because I try to focus on the conversation and make sure that we don't interrupt it too much with this. But Will asks, he says, a spot for a name, would like to know where the ledge or cutoff is for his favorite cluster of O-line prospects to be had in the draft. It's a good question, Will, and apologies for not getting that in front of Brandon sooner. May want to suggest reaching out to him on Twitter at Brandon Thorne NFL. You can find him there, and I'm sure he will give you his best answer that he can. So make sure you tune in for later today. Make sure that if you haven't already, head on over to jkboots.com. Use code HawkBlogger, get 10% off. The best pair of boots you're ever going to own, folks. You really are going to love these. And we are getting very, very close in the next couple of days where I will be picking who wins a Seahawks-themed pair of boots who use code HawkBlogger. You'll get the only pair of boots that are Seahawks-themed and designed this way in the world. One of a kind, just for you and your feet. So 10% off. And also, as always, we're always looking for more things we can do for charity. We just gave away a pair of boots to a LA firefighter who needed some fire boots to help keep LA as safe as possible. So head on over to jkboots.com, use code HawkBlogger. I'd greatly appreciate it. And again, make sure you give the show a like, click subscribe. We just passed through 14,000 subscribers here on YouTube. All right, everybody, I will see you later today. Until then, have a great one. This was episode 298, 298 straight days of Seahawks coverage from me over here, Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care, y'all.